Welcome to the Bay. Look, if you're planning a fresh PC build or just a massive upgrade this year, you're staring down the ultimate 2026 builder's dilemma. Before you even think about posting that new machine, you've got to answer one absolute unit of a question. Where exactly is your hard-earned cash going for the graphics card? Well, today, we're your safe harbor. We'll be using the incredibly detailed data from bestgpusforgaming.com as our navigational chart for this explainer. They've done all the heavy lifting, and we're going to break down their findings so you can make the absolute perfect choice. So the core conflict of this explainer really boils down to a classic heavyweight matchup. We're talking big RDNA3 muscle versus efficient Blackwell. On one side of the ring, we've got AMD's RX 7900 XT. This thing represents raw, unadulterated hardware power and just massive memory. And on the flip side, NVIDIA's RTX 5070, an absolute masterclass in modern architectural efficiency and AI-driven wizardry. Really, your decision boils down to this. Do you want to invest in massive VRAM muscle to just brute force through textures, or are you going to lean into next-gen software efficiency to generate those frames? Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the blueprint for our high-tech workshop today. 1. Brute force versus efficient tech. 2. Gaming performance. 3. Specs, VRAM, and power. 4. FPS per dollar value. And finally, number 5, which GPU actually wins? All right, kicking things off with Section 1, brute force versus efficient tech, the tale of the tape. To really get a grip on these two cards, we have to look at their totally different engineering philosophies. The battle lines are clearly drawn here. The RX 7900 XT, that is crowned as the champion for pure 1440p and 4K rasterization. And hey, if you need a quick refresher, rasterization is just your traditional, old-school method of rendering graphics. AMD just threw a massive die, a really wide memory bus, and tons of compute units at this card. It's literally pure brute force. But in contrast, the RTX 5070 is laser-focused on efficiency, ray tracing, and DLSS 4. NVIDIA isn't just trying to win by throwing more raw hardware at the problem. Nope. They're winning by using AI with DLSS 4 multi-frame generation to practically invent frames out of thin air. And they're doing all this while pushing incredibly realistic ray-traced lighting without melting your system. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds out gaming performance and our 1440p benchmarks. Because, at the end of the day, philosophies don't render your games. Hardware does. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean by brute force directly from the bestgpusforgaming.com data. Check this out. Running at 1440p on higher ultra settings, with ray tracing completely off, Cyberpunk 2077 hits 114 FPS on the 7090 XT, compared to the 5070's 99. In Hogwarts Legacy, it's 148 versus 118. And Forza Horizon 5, a blisteringly fast 185 versus 160. Across the board, the 7090 XT maintains a super consistent 8 to 18% lead in raw 1440p rasterization. Plus, it boasts correspondingly stronger 1% lows, which means way fewer stutters for you. So, if you've got a 1440Hz monitor and you love heavy single-player games without relying on upscaling, the AMD card is putting in some serious work here. Moving on to Section 3, specs, VRAM, and power. Time to look under the hood. Now, we can't just look at frame rates in a vacuum, right? Hardware specs dictate your thermals and, crucially, your bottlenecking. And boom, right there, 20 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM. This is absolutely the RX 7900 XT's ultimate trump card. Look, in the modern era of completely unoptimized PC ports, VRAM is a massive talking point. You can win the silicon lottery with an amazing GPU chip, but man, if you run out of VRAM, your game is going to stutter into a PowerPoint presentation. With 20 gigs on a 320-bit bus, the 7900 XT is practically future-proof against massive, heavy 4K texture mods and those super VRAM-hungry workloads. It just gives you this incredible peace of mind. But let's contrast that massive number with the 12 gigabytes over on the RTX 5070. Now, I know what you're thinking. On the surface, 12 might look a little light compared to 20, but it's really not quite that simple. The 5070 utilizes NVIDIA's newer GDDR7 memory built on that Blackwell architecture. What does that mean for you? It means significantly higher memory bandwidth and just staggering efficiency. NVIDIA's heavily relying on superior memory management and their DLSS technology to make sure those 12 gigabytes stretch incredibly far at 1440p without choking your system out.
There is a catch, though. All that raw power from AMD comes at a literal cost in electricity and heat. The RX 7900 XT pulls 315 watts and demands at least a 750 watt power supply. I mean, it's a massive 2.5 slot triple fan beast, It's basically a space heater for your gaming room, so you better have some really good airflow to avoid thermal throttling. The RTX 5070, meanwhile, it practically sips power at just 250 watts. You can comfortably run it on a 650-watt PSU. The cards themselves are physically smaller, often just dual fan setups, which means you totally avoid that dreaded cable spaghetti in smaller, more compact PC cases. Bottom line, it runs cooler, it runs quieter, and it just demands way less from your overall system.
All right, Section 4, FPS per dollar value, the bottom line. So with the 7900 XT sitting right around $600 and the 5070 sitting at about $549, which one actually gives you the most bang for your buck? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the nuance behind the numbers. Based on the data from bestgpusforgaming.com, the RX 7900 XT actually holds a slight edge in pure raster value. It gives you 0.30 frames per dollar compared to the 5070's 0.28. So in pure cost per frame, AMD wins. But wait, because of the 5070's lower $549 price tag, its ability to run on a cheaper power supply, that superior ray tracing we talked about, and the massive frame boost you get from DLSS 4, the overall long-term value often shifts right back to NVIDIA. For the average builder, the 5070 is incredibly cost-effective when you factor in the entire ecosystem and power draw.
Which brings us to Section 5, which GPU wins. Let's look at some builder profiles.
So the crucial point is, the benchmarks are run, the thermal paste is applied, and your specific use case is what actually dictates the winner here. Let's break it down. If you're a 4K enthusiast who wants maximum raw FPS, you play heavily modded games, and you absolutely need that massive 20GB VRAM buffer for long-term ultra-texture gaming, the RX 7900 XT is your undisputed winner. Period. However, if you're a ray tracing and DLSS gamer who prefers lighting realism, high efficiency, and you know you want to use NVIDIA's broadcast or reflex ecosystem, you buy the RTX 5070. And finally, if you're just a balanced 1440p builder looking for a cooler, quieter rig that's super easy on the power supply while still delivering top-tier modern performance, the RTX 5070 is usually the smarter, more practical buy. Now, we all know hardware pricing is literally always shifting. Deals pop up out of nowhere, stock fluctuates daily. So, to see the absolute latest current pricing snapshots and to dive even deeper into the specific game-by-game benchmarks we discussed today, I highly recommend checking out bestgpusforgaming.com. They are an absolutely incredible resource for navigating this totally wild and ever-changing hardware market. Before we wrap this explainer up, I want to leave you pondering a final question. As games get infinitely more complex, what is the true path to future-proofing? Is it relying on the massive brute force VRAM of the RX 7900 XT to physically muscle through bad optimization? Or is the ultimate future found in the elegant, AI-driven efficiency of the RTX 5070? Both paths offer incredible 1440p and 4K performance, for sure, but the philosophy you choose will completely define the soul of your next PC build. Make your choice, keep it cool, and keep building.